This is the podcast where you come alive to your own exclusive magic and find strategies to work that magic in the real world in a way that feels authentic and exciting and inspired and lucrative and fun. I'm your coach, Bethany Shipley, and this is the Bethany Shipley Show. Welcome back to the Bethany Shipley Show. You know, I had full intentions of recording this episode yesterday, and as life and as life does, I just started feeling pretty sick and had to close up shop. Like I had to go inside, and I don't know if you're this way too. Sometimes when I get physically sick, my mind also feels sick, and that was for sure happening. I posted a reel that was not in full authenticity. And what I mean by that is it was not actually me in my personal brand. It was me trying to fill a checkbox that said post a reel. And that checkbox I created, that kind of vibe. And I just deleted it. And I was like, you know what? No, I am going to live what I preach. I'm going to practice. This is the practice right here. When we are not in our magic, the work becomes getting back to our magic. When we're not living in our authentic personal brand, which if you're new to me and new to what that means, it means you are clear about who you came here to be, the most alive, magnetic version of you, the way that you came here, your isms, your spark, what lights you up. You're clear about what that is. And then the work becomes getting back to that. That's what authentic means. And if you didn't listen to the last few episodes actually, I think it's only the last episode, Redefining Authenticity, I highly recommend starting there. But today's episode is really, if I'm honest, it's really for the people who are inside of the course, Market Your Personal Brand. Those who are in the program right now are in between Module 3 and Module 4. So they're working on the homework of Module 3. And Module 3 is called Instinct. And the objective of Module 3 is to identify one word that goes in a circle of a Venn diagram. That's part of the course. You basically create your personal brand by answering a bunch of questions and becoming really introspective about who you are. And you fill in this Venn diagram, and that becomes the model that represents your personal brand. And so you have a clear vision for, again, your magic, your personal brand, what that is. So the people inside the course are inside of Module 3, and the objective of Module 3 is to identify one word that really represents how you prefer to feel most of the time. And we could say, I want to feel good most of the time, or I want to feel better most of the time, or I want to feel amazing most of the time. But how we interpret amazing, good, great, those are all individual to us. So while my feeling great, my peak state, how I want to feel most of the time may resonate more with the word inspired. Yours may resonate more with the word grounded, or the word adventurous, or the word in flow, or the word peaceful. And we all have, this, let's say I pick the word inspired, and let's say my husband also picks the word inspired. Even detailing what that means to us is important, because every one of us is experiencing the word inspired in a different way. And so anyway, I had intentions of kind of creating another video, like a live video in the group of where these people are going through Market Your Personal Brand. And I thought, you know what? This is a topic that I don't want to limit just to those who are in the course. The extended study of Module 3, which obviously you would only get the fullness of the course if you were in the course. But I feel like this is a message that everybody needs to hear, and I think it'll even be more of icing on the cake for those who are inside of Market Your Personal Brand. And so let's take a big deep breath, because I feel like I've been just blabbering at you a million miles an hour, throwing a bunch of stuff at you and hoping that some of it's landing. How you want to feel most of the time. You probably have a pretty good answer of what that is for you. You probably have a pretty good answer for how you prefer to feel, and whether or not you've ever thought about it or assigned a word to it or created a personally meaningful definition for what that is for you. you probably have a pretty clear idea of how you prefer to feel most of the time. And inside Module 3 of Market Your Personal Brand, I talk about how there's a difference often for a lot of us between our preferred state, this peace and flow, inspired, grounded, adventurous, whatever the word is for you, preferred state, and our emotional home, the place we land consciously or unconsciously most of the time. And for a lot of us, and I know for me, if I'm not intentional about returning to my most preferred state, then I tend to land in an emotional home that isn't really necessarily a great place to be. And inside the course, one of the reasons, of course, I think there's a lot of reasons. One of them is, it's just familiar to land in the emotional home that we land in. It's like, oh, I'm used to feeling overwhelmed, or I'm used to feeling inadequate. I'm used to feeling anxious. Familiarity is one of the reasons we land in our emotional home. But I think another reason that we land there and not in our preferred state is because of the impossible rules that we create for ourselves. And these impossible rules sound something like this. I will not allow myself to feel, insert most preferred state. For me, I'm going to use the word inspired because that's the word that's in my magic Venn diagram. I will not allow myself to feel inspired unless. And then what we do is we have a laundry list of things that must be in order for us to feel inspired. This is all unconscious, by the way. My house must be clean. My kids must be fed. My kids must be healthy. My kids must be going to school if school's in session. My marriage must be thriving. My family must be happy. My sleep must be on point. And I'm using the word must, not because that's normally what I would say, but because that's actually how it feels. These rules we create must be in accordance to our life in order for us to feel the way we say we want to feel most of the time. And here is what I believe. First of all, I believe that, what Tony Robbins says, I think is so accurate. And I'm struggling to remember the actual quote, but it's something along the lines of, our life can only be as good as the emotional home to which we habitually return. And I believe that's true. And I also believe that we have the personal power to create and facilitate feelings in our body by consciously choosing the thoughts that we think. And it's a lot easier said than done. And I don't think that this is something that is, oh gosh, it's just as easy as thinking the thought you want to think. I think it takes a lot of work, and I think it takes a lot of intention, but I do believe it's possible. And I also believe that what we focus on expands for us. So here is what I want to do together today. When my husband and I decided to do what I call the Great Purge, we jokingly called the Great Purge. Anything that we can't find in our house, we probably lost in the Great Purge. We sold our home. It was like 3,000 square foot home, maybe even bigger than that. We sold our home in 2021 and we moved into a camper with 4 children. So this camper was 33 feet and it only had one slide out. And it was so tiny. Each kid had one drawer that all of their clothes went in, and it was tight. We had very limited space. And so we had to get rid of so many things. And in the past, when we had, decluttered, maybe I would go to a closet and I would pull out things from the closet that I wanted to donate. So I would just kind of, visually scan the closet and pull out things that I wanted to donate. Versus when we had to get really serious about the project, we literally emptied the entire closet contents into the living room and we pulled out only what we were going to keep. So it was like we flipped the process on its head. Instead of pulling out what we were going to give away, we pulled out what we were going to keep, which made for a much more thorough purge because we had to. So if you're serious about this work, if you're serious about the work of understanding your magic and living in it, AKA understanding your personal brand and living in it, and I'm serious about it, then I'm encouraging you to hold my hand right now. We're going to jump in and start doing this process flipped on its head. So we know we want to feel a certain way. We've identified how we prefer to feel most of the time. And we've identified maybe the disconnect between our emotional home that we just habitually return to, just on default, like, oops, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Oops, I'm feeling anxious. Oops, I'm feeling inadequate. These are just the ways that our unconscious mind takes us to feel. So we've identified this difference. We have a preferred state that we want to feel, and we have an emotional home that we habitually return. And we'd like for those things to actually be the same. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the closet process. Instead of just picking things out of the closet that we want to give away, we're going to dump out all the contents and we're going to pick out just what we're going to keep. And so what does that look like in this process? Instead of saying, in order to feel inspired, I must have the following. My marriage must be in check. My home must be in check. My family must be well, etc., etc., etc. And instead of just crossing off, okay, well, I guess my marriage wouldn't have to be in check for me to feel inspired. And again, inspired is just my word. Your word would be different for how you prefer to feel most of the time. Instead of just crossing off, all right, well, I guess I could go without marriage, and I guess I could go without sleep. We're going to flip it all on its head, and we're going to do this whole closet, purge a different way. And that is, we're going to choose when we're going to feel inspired. And we're going to make the list so freaking long that there is no way we can go through a day without feeling this way. So here's some ideas. Here are literally what I came up with this morning as some ideas to make some rules. Instead of impossible rules we create, we could just call this rules we create. This is the rule of when I'm going to feel my most preferred state. When I sip my coffee, I am feeling inspired. I am going to feel inspired. And it's literally that simple. It does not matter what happens outside of that sip of coffee. I am going to feel inspired when I sip that coffee. When I'm walking up from dropping my kids at the bus stop, which is actually just at the end of our driveway, I walk up our yard, our front yard, which is, I don't know, 30 yards, 40 yards. And I'm looking at our little farmhouse and I'm just allowing my heart to be expanded with this feeling of inspiration. That's a rule I am creating. When I see my home, I will feel inspired. When I drink a drink of water, I will feel inspired. When I get an idea, I feel inspired. When I get to put on moisturizer at the end of a day and I just spray my little frankincense spray inside of the moisture, I use castor oil and this mix called clary. It's like got clary sage in it, Clariderm. I spray Clariderm into my castor oil and it just makes the most perfect moisturizer you've ever felt in your life. I feel inspired. I'm choosing. That's a rule I'm creating. When I slip my slippers on, they're like the $20 knockoff Target. Like they're from Target, but they're knockoffs for something. I don't even know what they're knockoffs for, but I just love them. I'm choosing a rule. I'm creating a rule that I'm going to feel inspired when I slip my slippers on. When I text my husband and I say, I love you so much, I am choosing to feel inspired, etc., 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 etc. There are so many opportunities to feel the way we want to feel. So instead of creating a rule list of things that must be in order in our life in order to feel it, I'm saying let's clean out the closet in a different way. Let's put all the contents in the middle of the floor and pick out what we're going to keep. And we're going to make a bunch of rules of when we will feel inspired. Now, again, inspired is my word. Your most preferred state, how you prefer to feel most of the time, would have a different word than that. If you're in the course and you're listening to this as kind of the extended study, then you know your word. And I want to encourage you. Of course, this is not part of the course. This is like a bonus. Like as I'm teaching it, I'm also living it and I'm also exploring it. I want you to imagine what it would look like to create rules of when you will feel this way. rules, not impossible rules of what must be in order to feel this way, but rules personally you will allow yourself. And also, I wouldn't say even allow yourself, but yeah, I would say rules that you will allow yourself to feel this most preferred state with just one thing at a time. And what's going to happen is, as we know, what we focus on expands. What's going to happen naturally is this feeling is going to become more and more habitual, because the more rules you have in order, the more often you're going to feel it, and then you're going to feel it, and then it's going to even grow bigger and bigger. And some of us, this journey is going to be harder than others, because some of us, our habitual emotional home is so deeply ingrained, and we're getting something from that home that we haven't called out yet. What we're getting from that home, so I used this example in the course and teaching it in module 3 yesterday. I used this example, and those of you who are on, you will remember this, that we get things from our emotional home, and oftentimes, like for example, my word that resonated with my emotional home that I used to habitually return to was overwhelm. And of course, sometimes I still land there because I'm a human and I'm working through all these human emotions. But this overwhelm was habitually coming up. And when someone asked me, and what are you getting from that state? I said, absolutely nothing. I'm not getting anything from that state. And they said, you're wrong. You are getting something from it, or else you wouldn't be returning to it. So I sat with that for a little bit. And my coach, Brandon, at the time asked me, let me ask you this, Bethany. He said, what would you rather do anything than to feel? Like, what do you not want to feel? And I'm like, well, I consider myself pretty good with handling any and all emotions. But I started exploring that question, and my answer to that was, I would rather do anything than to feel bored, stagnant, complacent, unproductive. And he said, okay, so you would rather do anything to feel bored, stagnant, unproductive. So what do you do instead of feeling bored, stagnant, and unproductive? And of course, I said, I fill my schedule to the brim. I make sure that if I'm working 8 hours, those 8 hours are jam-packed with activity. I don't leave room for margin, because margin has the potential to feel boring or unproductive. And then, of course, he asked me, what does that get you? And I realized that I was literally creating a state of overwhelm, because I was not willing to feel bored, stagnant, and unproductive. And the reality is that if I have margin time now, I don't feel bored, stagnant, and unproductive. But I had to be willing to learn how to sit with time. And I will say, I am still working on this. Yesterday, when I felt pretty terrible physically and then also mentally, I had trouble. I'm like, I don't feel up to reading, kind of twiddling my thumbs, looking out the window, playing the piano, drawing cartoons, like literally just trying to figure out, what do I do with myself when I don't have direction? So I don't want to paint the picture that I'm like, I have settled it. I'm 100%. No, I'm still in it. This is my curriculum in this area. But when I realized that I'm running from bored, stagnant, unproductive, then I become overwhelmed. It's actually getting me something. And the thing it's getting me is I don't have to feel the feeling I'd rather not feel. I'd rather feel overwhelmed than to feel bored, stagnant, unproductive. So this emotional home that we return to habitually, it is serving us in some way. Maybe it's because, like I said before, it's familiar. But it could also be because it's protecting us from something we're not willing to feel. And for me, bored, stagnant, unproductive bumped up against an identity that I was not, and still sometimes battle with, was an identity that I was not willing to face. And this identity of lazy, this identity of worthless because I couldn't produce. And it all wraps back up to the biggest life lesson that I feel like I've been delivered on a silver platter. This contradiction for me between being and doing. For a long part of my life, being was secondary to doing. Like I wouldn't mind so much if I was in a pleasant experience, like if I was feeling okay, or if I was happy or if I was in purpose or fulfilled, as long as I was doing something that I felt like was valuable. And I really put my own value on my doing. And of course, as I've shared in literally every episode, I feel like, of this podcast, my body shut down and said, no, you're not going to live like this. It's not sustainable. And the greatest gift I was ever given was having to be forced with the reckoning of being and doing. And that's where all of this work was born from. All of the work of Market Your Personal Brand, which is my signature course and program that I believe, and I would do anything I needed to do to have as many people go through this program as possible, because I think it gives people a framework for what does being actually look like for you? What did you come here to be? And let's let the doing come from that, not the opposite way around. So with that, and I will wrap this episode up with just kind of an overview of the point that I'm making here. The point that I'm making here is that one of the elements of you knowing who you are, one of the elements of your being, is understanding how you prefer to feel most of the time. And when you understand how you prefer to feel most of the time, the work becomes actually feeling that way most of the time. The reason you don't feel that way most of the time, if you don't, is likely because of impossible rules you have created for yourself. In order to feel that way, things must be in order, and that list is likely very long. And today in this episode, I am giving you the framework to say, if I want to feel that way most of the time, I'm going to have to change up my strategy and go Marie Kondo and flip it on its head. And I'm going to choose that I will feel that preferred state most of the time when this is in order. When I drink my coffee, when I see my home, when I get an idea. And for you, this might be different. When I see the eyes of my child. There's so many ways we can make rules to feel the way that we want to feel. And intention, as we go from habitually returning to this emotional home that we happen to land unconsciously most of the time into our most preferred state. Now, I'm going to wrap this episode up with saying that if you are not yet a part of the Market Your Personal Brand program and you want to be, there is a link in the show notes that will put you on the waiting list for when the next round of Market Your Personal Brand is launched. And as of this month, I am shifting Market Your Personal Brand from being something that can be purchased anytime as a standalone product where you work through the course on your own to exclusively being available when you go through it with the group. And it's just better. It's just better with the group. I can't explain it, but it's clear as day that that's the route this program wants to go. And so I'm all about it. The next round of the program will be starting mid-April 2025, and we are not currently open for enrollment. So if you want to be on the wait list and you're interested in this work, I recommend you go and get on the wait list from the link in the show notes. If you are listening to this episode from Market Your Personal Brand, the extended study of Module 3, I would absolutely love to hear your feedback on the rules you are creating in order to feel your most preferred state. So not the impossible rules that you've created, because of course, as we know, the list would be way too long, but the new rules, like the when you sip your coffee, the when you see your house, the when you get an idea, whatever your list is. And I'm sure it will be evolutionary and growing as we go together in learning how to create more of this most preferred state. But reach out to me and I would love to see your list. With that, my friends, I bid you farewell. Thank you for listening to the Bethany Shipley Show. And there are 3 ways that you can support this podcast. The first way is leave a rating. So anywhere you listen to this, if you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen, there's an option to drop some stars. So that's really helpful. The second way, of course, is to drop a review, even if it's just a 1-line review, like this was great, I loved it so much, an inside joke you and I share, like whatever. drop a line. That's the second way. And the third way is to screenshot the episode and share it on your social media. If I see it, I will reshare it. Sometimes social media gives me a little trouble in like showing me things at the right time if we don't both follow each other. But if I see it, I will reshare it. And it just is so exciting to me when it's not just me over here with my microphone, you know? It's like we're actually talking about this together, even if there's a delay in the time that I'm putting it out there and you're listening to it. It's just good to know that we're in it together and it's not just me. It's just really encouraging. If you're a creator, you get it. All right, you guys, have a beautiful rest of your day. And thanks for listening to The Bethany Shipley Show. Thank you so much for listening to The Bethany Shipley Show. I hope you feel more inspired. I hope you feel more excited, more clear on what your magic is, because you are made of magic. And so all you have to do to make the magic happen is put yourself out there. So get on out there and do your best now, you hear?